Good afternoon.
Hello, how can I help you?
Yeah, I'm rather interested in the public speaking course you're running next month.
Yes.
Well, I have a few questions. Could you help me at all?
Yes, I'll certainly try.
Oh, thank you. First of all, according to your website, it seems there are three courses opening.
Yes, that's right.
I'm not quite sure about the difference between them. I'm not sure which one would be best for me.
Okay, well, I'll just go over each course briefly and then you'll probably have a better idea.
Oh, okay, thank you.
The main differences are the context, the group size, and the level of formality. So, Course A is really designed to help people in a fairly small meeting of, say, up to 12 people and in quite informal situations. So, for example, internal meetings at work. This course also aims to help people to give presentations again to groups no larger than about 12 people and again in fairly informal situations.
I see.
Course B is also aimed at meetings and presentations, but in more formal settings, and you also get into larger group sizes. So this is really for people who have to go outside their company and make presentations to clients or potential clients, and who also have to take part in quite high-level meetings, again outside of the company.
Okay, I understand the difference between those two.
Okay then, and the third course, Course C, is also formal situations, but the focus is on much larger groups, conference presentations and meetings involving very large numbers of people, very often in international settings, so this course deals with speaking to people from other cultures.
Oh, I see. So it's mainly for international business people?
Yes, I suppose it really is. If you'd like to know the price for each course, Course A is £456, Course B is £716, and Course C is £1,079.
Okay, B, £716 and C, £1,079, right? Thank you very much.
So, what course do you think would be best for you? What's your situation, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, to be honest, I started a new job about 2 months ago, and it does involve a lot more meetings, and, well, I just get very nervous in the meetings, and I find it quite difficult to get my point across.
I see. Don't worry, you're not on your own. Our courses are usually full, so there are a lot of people just like yourself. Perhaps we all spend so much time in front of computers these days that we're forgetting how to communicate with each other.
Yes, maybe.
So it seems Course A would probably be best for you.
Yes, it seems so. Do you have a course description for that one?
Yes, I do. Just a second. Here we are. So you'll be covering 6 main areas: understanding your audience, organising what you want to say, holding people's attention, speaking with confidence and clarity, using visual aids, and handling Q&A sessions.
Speaking with confidence and clarity. Sorry, I'm just making a note. And the last two, sorry?
Using visual aids and handling Q&A, question and answer sessions.
Q&A sessions. Okay, thank you. Well, that sounds very interesting and just what I need probably. I'd just like to think it over for a day or two.
Of course, and if you have any more questions, call in or just give me a ring.
Right. Well, you've been very helpful. Could I take your name, please?
Of course, it's Penny Lawsons, Lawsons.
Oh, with an S at the end.
Yes, a little unusual.
Okay, well, thanks again.
Good morning, everyone. As part of our ongoing workshops on group work, we're going to look again today at effective communication. I'd like to begin with a fundamental question. Why do we communicate? It's important to remind ourselves of this because, of course, all communication takes place for a reason. There is a purpose behind every message we send. So what are some of these reasons? Well, perhaps the first reason would be to become acquainted. Hello, I'm John. Nice to meet you. We perhaps then communicate in order to build a relationship with someone. How do you like to spend your weekends? And perhaps later to express emotions. I always feel so relaxed talking to you. We may simply want to share information with someone, or we may want to do something more complicated, involving more advanced communication skills, like, for example, persuade someone, a skill we'll be returning to again and again in these sessions. How then can we ensure that we send these messages effectively? Communication can seem so simple, and yet it is often quite complex. It can seem so easy, and yet how often do we get it wrong? It can seem simple and easy because all we need to do is to say something or write something. But in reality, it is a complex for many reasons. Not least of all, language itself. We have to remember in verbal communication that the meaning of any message is the message that is received by the listener, not the one sent by the speaker. Unfortunately, as we know from experience, they're not always the same. Miscommunication can occur as a result of different interpretations of the words used, their connotation, the intonation used, and so on. And we should also remind ourselves that aside from how effectively we use language, there are other non-communicative factors which we have very significant impact on communication. Here I'm talking about, for example, how well respected a speaker is within the group he or she is talking to, how much trust people place in the speaker, how well liked the person is. All these factors will play an important role in how the messages are received. So moving on then, how do we improve our communication skills and become more effective? Let's consider what is perhaps the single most important skill, the starting point for everything else. Ask most people what they think this skill is, and often they'll suggest either the way you speak or your body language. However, though these factors of course play an important role, the starting point has to be listening, and more specifically, what we now refer to as active listening. So what exactly is active listening? Well, active listening requires relaxed attention, and in order to get relaxed attention, you need to relax, of course. You need to listen with your whole body, if I can put it that way. So you need to face the person. You need to maintain an acceptable level of eye contact. This can vary from culture to culture, so we'll be returning to that point. You need to try not to interrupt, but you do need to test your interpretation of what the speaker is saying at appropriate intervals. Manage to do all of this and you're engaged in active listening. And I'm sure you can see that there are so many advantages to active listening. First of all, it helps everyone to get on the same page. Secondly, communication doesn't take so long because you don't have to repeat messages as often. And probably it also helps to reduce the level of frustration in the group. And thirdly, it provides the clarity which the group requires in order for them to move forward. Having listened actively and understood clearly the messages sent, then, in order to move forward, of course, we need to talk to the other members of the group. And here again, speaking is a little like doing sport. You need to practice at it to get good. It doesn't just happen. Well, not for most of us anyway. So later we will be practicing and observing each other in a range of different situations. The basics, however, are firstly to be very clear. That's number one. Clarity comes from saying precisely what you want to say in as few words as you can and in a logical, organized way, so that the risk of being misunderstood is minimized. This, of course, includes avoiding digression. Another point is that you also need to avoid becoming over-emotional about what you're saying. Perhaps this sounds obvious, but quite often it can be quite difficult when the conversations are about important issues.
Hello there, can I help you?
Hello, I've just enrolled on one of your language courses and they told me I'd be able to use this language lab.
I see. So which language course are you going to do?
Italian, intermediate level, the morning course.
I see. Intermediate Italian. Well, the section you require is over there in the far corner. Let me show you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You can see that we've actually divided the resource material into two sections. This is section 1 here on the left, and this is section 2 on your right.
Okay, so, sorry, what's the difference between the two sections?
Well, section 1 is from beginner level up to end of pre-intermediate, and section 2 is from the start of intermediate to the end of upper intermediate. That's as high as we go, I'm afraid. For Italian, that is. We don't yet have any study materials for advanced levels.
Okay, I see.
So, for people at your level, you're going to be mainly interested in section 2. But I say mainly because quite a few people like to go over language from lower levels sometimes. You know, just to brush up a little. So you may find some of the materials in section 1 useful as well.
Okay, I can see a lot of worksheets here, but you have listening material as well.
Yes, we do. These worksheets just here. All of these link up to a listening to an audio file. You can find the audios by their reference number. You can see how the number lines up with the worksheet.
Okay, I see. And where can I listen to them?
We have a listening lab just through the door over there. The reason we keep the CDs here is that people can be noisy when they're looking for materials, so we thought it's best to keep the materials outside of the listening lab.
That seems like a good idea.
Now, to actually get into the CD cabinet, you'll need to ask the teacher on duty. They have the key. Unfortunately, we've had a few CDs gone missing, so we have to do that in that way.
Okay, I see.
For the same reason, I'm afraid you can't take the CDs out. You can only listen to them here. That also applies to all the worksheets.
I see. Well, that's understandable.
We do also have some graded readers. You know, easy novels you can read to build your vocabulary. Now, you can actually borrow these for a limited time.
I see. How long is that?
2 weeks. So you have to bring the book back every 14 days. But as long as no one else has requested the book, you can take the book out for another 14 days.
Well, you certainly seem to have a lot of resources here. It's going to take me a while to find my way around.
Well, yes, we have built up quite a large bank over the years. But actually, if you're interested and you have the time, we do run workshops on using the language lab.
Oh, really? That could be interesting. When are they?
In the first 2 weeks of each term, we have 2 workshops each week. The content is the same. We just offer timetables. So this week, for example, there's one on Thursday evening at 6 p.m. and one on Saturday morning at 11. And next week, the evening session is on Wednesday at the same time, and again on Saturday morning. That one actually starts a little earlier, at 10:30.
I see. Well, yes, I'm interested. What do they cover exactly?
Well, the teacher will start off by helping you set your objectives for the next 3 months, and then they will show you how to draw up a self-study plan.
Oh, really? That could be very useful.
Yes. Then the teacher will go on to explain the layout of the language lab's resources. Then you will have an opportunity to answer any questions. All of that takes about an hour and a half. Then we have a short break, which is quite a good opportunity for a social chat with the other students.
Okay, that sounds good.
And then, after the break, the workshop becomes very hands-on. So you'll be expected to go into the language lab, find what you think are the useful resources for you, and then report back. It's a great way of getting more familiar with the lab.
Well, that sounds really good. So, when did you say?
Well, welcome to this, our second session on the history of the English language. Let me lead in today by asking the question, what exactly is grammar? Well, clearly there are many definitions. One I'd like to introduce you to this morning is that grammar can be seen as a set of rules for the communal use of a language. Okay, so that's a set of rules for the Communal use of a language. Why would we define grammar in this way? Well, the answer is because a language can never become a truly national language unless all users of that language share common rules for how words are invented, used, and strung together in sentences. When by some means the users of a language no longer share these rules, the language fragments. It fragments into dialects and eventually, possibly, into completely new languages. So we can see that this is a useful way in which to think about grammar in general, not the only way of course, and a useful way for us to think about it in this session today. Please note that we are emphasizing the role of the user of the language in this definition. So, before a grammar can be formalized, the language must be stable and universal enough to warrant a study by grammarians. That initial stability has in the past come not from formal teaching, but from the popularity of storytellers and their styles. So in fact, from the acceptance and use of a language by the people. The language comes first, and the formal grammar, if the language is accepted, will follow. We will see now how this mechanism is clearly shown in the history of the English language itself. It was in about the 5th century AD when the Angles and the Saxons settled in Britain. It is their language that was the foundation of all variants of modern English, a variant which thrived and developed and became the language of common people, the language of scholars and the language of kings. English at that time was the English of Wessex, the English of King Alfred, and the English of his court. That one dialect was the language of the people. That is, until 1066. Following the death of Edward the Confessor, of course, a challenge arose between Harold Godwinson and William of Normandy. Each claimed a right to the throne of England. While Harold was away in the north fighting Harold Hardrada's invading army, William landed his forces on the south coast of England near to Hastings. Harold's men, after defeating the Norsemen in the north, made a forced march south and confronted the Normans. In the ensuing battle, Harold's men were getting the best of it until they broke ranks to pursue a group of fleeing Normans. William took advantage of that brief indiscipline and broke the defenders' ranks. And the rest, as they say, is history. William was victorious. So, the Normans then started to impose their language on the whole country. Before long, there was no opportunity for advancement for anyone who didn't speak Norman French. Soon, French was taught in the schools not as a foreign language, but as a national language. English became mostly the language of the uneducated classes, with few exceptions. Robert of Gloucester, writing in 1268, suggested that children should be taught French from the time they were rocked in the cradle. Attempts to establish French as a national language, however, did not run so smoothly. It is often found that rural people and the poor look down on the snobbery of those who insist on speaking with what the lower classes consider to be a false accent. And so it was with the competition between French and English. In 1273, Matthew of Westminster wrote that whoever was unable to speak English was considered vile and contemptible by the common people. So, in a brief span of years, there was a pressure from the bottom ranks upwards to restore English to its place as a national language. A few years later, in 1292, Edward I became the first English king since Harold to have a Saxon English name. So, within a comparatively short time, it became a matter worthy of note that an educated man, like Edward, could travel widely and not meet anybody who could speak French. It was then apparent that French had not spread as far as those in power had hoped. So at that point, It was acknowledged by many of those in authority that educated men needed both French and English. And so English was given a push forward at this time and began to be seen as a national language once again from around 1350 onwards. From there, things moved quickly. In 1362, Parliament was opened with the customary Chancellor's address, but in English, not French. In the same year, a law decreed that English was to be the official language of the courts, and in the same brief period, English replaced French in all the schools. As we touched on then at the beginning of this session, before a language can truly be said to be a national language, it must to a large degree employ standards of choice, words, spelling and word order. Such standards in the English language can be attributed in a large part, as we all know, to a gentleman by the name of Geoffrey Chaucer, 1343 to 1400. Now, he has been well described as the first founder of our fair language and father of modern English. Here we have a storyteller writing in the new national language, English. Not the official English of the court or the academic world, but rather the English of the common people. It is extraordinary that an author's caricature of the English of ordinary people should then be adopted as a standard and a model by academics. Strange but true.